As you launch out into the process of trying to maybe save your marriage, maybe just save yourself, maybe just not even know what you're trying to save, but you're moving forward in recovery, there's going to be a desire for comfort. You know, it's funny, everybody talks about, there's comfort food, and if you talk to enough betrayed spouses who are years down the road, and even unfaithful, they'll usually tell you what they used for comfort, right? For me, I kind of drank a lot. I rode a lot of motocross. I drove a lot and just listened to music, yelled, screamed, prayed, cussed, punched my steering wheel. I really took some long drives in the middle of nowhere, got lost. Those were some things that I did for comfort. And, there's comfort food, there's comfort drink. And today I want to talk to you about a delicate message about what you're using to comfort yourself. And some of my video blogs, I know you feel maybe a bent towards the unfaithful or a bent towards the betrayed. And today I want to make sure that you understand that this is for both of you, the unfaithful spouse and the betrayed spouse. If you are early on in recovery, this is going to be a little bit harder to grab hold of. If you're a little further into recovery, this will be easier to process. Whether you're betrayed or unfaithful, it doesn't really matter, but how long into recovery really does matter. There comes a time, though, when you can no longer be comforted by some things that you have used to comfort you that are actually going to betray you and not help you. For example, early on, and even about almost 2 years into recovery, I kept telling myself things like, well, I'll never really be in the public eye again. I'll never really be used by God again. I'm always just going to be this failure. I really just need to be happy with, the bare minimum. There were several things I told myself that comforted myself, but were really not true. Now, we come to these moments where we can no longer reach for the blanket of self-pity or self-loathing or self-hatred. Because it's really not helping, it's actually pushing away your spouse, and it's making it harder for you to heal. Now, I'll be honest with you, it feels good to pout, especially if you're an unfaithful, right? It feels good to kind of pout or relish in self-pity because it's seductive. What we did do was terrible. The trauma that we brought upon our lives is our fault. We have done this. But there comes a point where you can't continue to wallow in self-pity, because if you do, it's actually making the focus of your recovery you and not your spouse. And your spouse is never going to feel safe enough to pursue restoration if all you do is focus on you. It's only going to get worse. And again, I was really an expert at this, because there would be moments with Rick Reynolds I would say, man, that's so good. I see how I was this, and this. And man, it's becoming clear now. And you know what? It's also clear how Samantha does this, and this. What do you think about her? Is she going to be able to ever change and deal with these things? And Rick would say, it's funny, you're still focused on her and not you. I absolutely hated that. I hate it now. I hate that thought. And I think in many ways it's human nature to blame, to justify, to say, okay, but what about her, right? And I just want to tell you that there is a point in our recovery, and I don't know if you're there yet. I don't know how long it's been. I don't know what you're dealing with, but I know for some of you, actually a lot of you, there is a point where you have to no longer allow the comfort zone of self-hatred, pity, self-loathing, discouragement, and hopelessness to comfort you. You're going to have to take the exercise of intentionally pursuing hope, intentionally forgiving yourself, intentionally going after healing some of the wounds that are in your soul that in many ways have caused you to act out. It's not an excuse, it's just the reality. Nobody just wakes up and has an affair. Nobody just wakes up and develops an addiction. Usually there's hurt, there's pain, there's deficiency in our soul and our heart that has caused us to do what we do. And it's very easy to comfort ourselves and say, well, you know, I'll never be used by God again. I'll never do anything good again, and that's okay. That's a lie. There's so many ways we can say, well, you know what? She's just a terrible communicator. Well, let me deal with that. You know what? She may have some terrible communication tendencies, or he may have some terrible abilities to communicate or empathize, but that doesn't alleviate the fact that you have to work on you. Maybe you need to get smarter in your communication. Maybe you think they're a terrible communicator because you, case in point, actually have the masterful ability to turn every conversation over and focus on them rather than focusing on you. That was a big issue for me. If I'm not careful, it can become an issue now. You see, it's much easier to hate ourselves than to pursue hope. It's much easier to blame our spouse than it is to take ownership and actually own what we've done, admit that we've done what we've done because we're unhealthy, and throw ourselves on the floor of humility and brokenness and simply say, I've got to do whatever it takes to get healthy. It's easier to comfort ourselves with self-pity than it is to start to really pursue forgiveness and health, even in the face of uncertainty about your marriage. The truth is, man, if you're a betrayed spouse, it's incredibly scary to think about trusting again, to think about opening up your heart and life again, about being betrayed again and relapse. Sometimes you're so exhausted you don't even know if you want to go down that road, and I completely understand. But what I want to challenge you to consider is that sometimes it's more comforting to stay in a place of fear than it is to move forward with an understanding that, you know what, it is scary to do these things, and I don't know if I'm willing to trust them again. I don't know if I'm willing to pursue the marriage, but I'm more willing to forsake the blanket of uncertainty than I am to continue to wallow in this uncertainty. I don't want to live that way. I'm going to take one step at a time. I'm not reaching for the blanket of self-pity. I'm not reaching for the blanket of I'll never be used again. I'm not going to reach for the blanket of I'm just a worthless soul. I'm just a terrible person. I'm not going to reach for that blanket anymore. You know what? I'm going to begin to get healthy, and that's change. When we throw aside faulty comfort zones, when we decide to slowly but surely break free of the lies that are comforting us, that's how we begin to change.